All right, guys, the last part of your notes, finishing up with federalism and some of the issues that occur with federalism. One of the types of federalism that I mentioned has to do with fiscal federalism, and fiscal policy is the way the government taxes and spends money. The fiscal federalism really shows the issues of grants. There's two types of grants to concern yourself with. There's categorical grants and there's block grants. There's a difference between the two. You can read it for yourself. I'm not going to really explain, I'm not going to read what's in front of you, but know that the block grants tend to be a little more favorable because it leaves it wide open for a community, a state, a local government to decide where to throw the funds to. The big deal with this fiscal federalism is the fact that you get everybody that is running for them. And as you can see in this scramble for federal dollars, the U.S. government puts out over $600 billion annually for grant money. In this grant money, the federal government has taken what's known as a universalism approach. And that means that there is no discrimination, that it's up for grabs for everybody. It's not geared towards one particular group or one particular type of idea. The downside to fiscal federalism is that you get a whole bunch of mandates. This is exactly what you think it is. It is one guy going on a date with another. It is a mandate. No, I'm kidding. A mandate is when the government makes rules and regulations. State and local governments are required to adhere to these rules and regulations, and they are often threatened with penalty. However, you don't get extra grant money to fulfill these mandates. You don't. Sometimes there's no money to fulfill a mandate, and sometimes it's actually the mandates. These rules and regulations say you have to jump through hoops before you can ever get your grant, and this causes a lot of strife between the national government and the state and local governments as well. This is a real issue currently with the idea of fiscal federalism and the idea of federalism overall. Other issues with federalism, you have states, according to Article 4 of the Constitution, states are required to be responsible and honor other states' ideas that they put forward. Article 4 of the Constitution has something that's known as the full faith and credit clause. Here it says that states are required to give full faith and credit to the public acts, records, and civil judicial proceedings of all other states. And you've really run into this idea that's a problem in federalism recently with same-sex marriage and abortion laws in other states. Also within Article 4, you have extradition laws, you have in Article 4 privileges and immunities. This is where you find the same-sex same-sex marriage laws coming into conflict, and all of this has to do with federalism. Federalism says that there's going to be cooperation between a national and sub-level governments, but it also says that there's going to be cooperation between equal-level governments, and that's your various states are equal level, and this has turned into a real problem when it comes to federalism and our states joining together. Finally, federalism creates a representative or democracy here in the United States. Really, it's called a republic, and there's a famous quote when the Constitutional Convention is finally over. The people ask Benjamin Franklin as he leaves the convention, "What kind of government have you given us?" He says that we've given you a republic if you can handle it. This idea of a republic where you have representatives coming together to represent their areas, their locales, into the national government has caused strife within the national government. What's good for someone in Montana may not be good for someone in Florida or Texas or California or New York. This whole idea, though, has gradually caused a democratization of the Constitution and is supposed to push us away from the idea that there's that elitist theory of democracy where that elite class is taking over. A lot of people would argue that what you really have is a pluralist idea of democracy that has taken hold. Of course, in our modern times, we'd look at that and say, really? Is there really a pluralist idea? And this is a debate that has continued, and all of this started because of federalism. So some positives and some negatives about the Republican form of democracy, the Federalist form, the Republic form here. The positive: the Republic is a form of government in which the people select the representatives to govern them and make laws, and this is fantastic. Now you hear from the various locales within our great nation. However, on the downside, the system of checks and balances and the separation of power has a conservative bias and favors the status quo. That means that change just isn't easy to happen, and we definitely see that. This system is a big negative to Madison's idea that he created, that is really a huge part of the federalism idea that governs our Constitution. So separation of power, checks and balances are supposed to promote the demands for public policy to be heard by everyone. Overall, you can see that the scope of our government has really entailed itself to that idea of hyper-pluralism that was mentioned so long ago. This is a huge drawback to our system, that somehow our government seems to be at a standstill. We have what's known as gridlock. This is a negative to federalism. This is a drawback to the separation of powers in the system of checks and balances. However, some people would argue that this is a good thing. The federalism, that the separation of the separation of power and the system of checks and balances have caused our government to address a lot of issues that may never have been addressed had we not agreed to this system. That does it for your notes. If you have questions, feel free to ask them in class, guys. Sorry I've been away for so long, but don't worry, I will be back, I promise.